What's your favorite game? Take some time to think about it. I don't want to rush you. I think I despise being asked that question. Its complete specificity and complicated clarity, it makes you in a near instant judge all of the games you played in your life, to analyze them so granularly that you deconstruct them all the way down to their individual atoms, and to do this for another person to sit quietly and judge. Your first thoughts might be the classics that you think fondly back to. Those nights where you'd ask mom and dad for just one more hour, or maybe the monoliths that are both blessings and curses to the consumers of video games. And you would do all of this just to validate your own opinions to someone else. That's when you start to think of genres and what they might think. If it's a single player, will they see me as a loner? If it's a horror, does that make me odd? If I pick something esoteric, something like Journey, what will they think? So maybe it's easier to change the question. What's your favorite game in this instant? A game that you can truly get lost in. Welp, I'm going to talk about space now, so chill out and listen. I'm DTM, I think I'm smart sometimes, and this is EVE Online, the best space game you will never play. I think before we get into the who, why, and where of the game, we should probably cover the guy who stared this absolute beast of a game into a state of being. Born in 1974, our boy Thorolfur Beck grew up with games much like us. At 11 years old, he got his first taste of the stars with 1984's Elite. Co-piloting with his friend Benny, activating countermeasures and locking missiles, they explored the stars together. Where in those quiet, mass-locked moments, he would envision a multiplayer Elite-style experience, where him and his friends could all fly their own ships together in space. Though, at the time, Beck didn't think he'd have to wait long with the rapid advancement of technology, much less, though, did he realize at the time he would be building that world he imagined himself. Over the next 12 years, he would learn English, and he would get involved with a software training company called Oz Interactive, which was training up a team that were experts in delivering real-time interactive graphics over the internet. They were essentially early MMO architects. So, in 1997, him, along with his friend Rainit, would co-found Crowd Control Productions, later known as CCP Games. Their first game, a little-known board game in the US, more known in Iceland, going by the English name Danger Game, which I would give a try if I were you. After the release of their board game, they used the cash influx to fund their real goal, enter EVE Online. The project was ambitious, and Beck was seeking a level of polish unheard of, not only on their first game, but to date on the most open MMO RPG in existence. And maybe that's one of the issues at the core of what they ended up creating. Beck would go on to say, "I had moments of being the crazy guy in the studio trying to work on the impossible masterpiece, seeing doom and failure and how far EVE was from ideal." Beck would end up later getting kicked out of the studio and having his 20% majority share of the company bought from him. So where does that leave EVE Online? EVE Online, released in 2003, shortly after Beck was kicked out of the studio, suffers from a sort of identity crisis. It certainly is a massively multiplayer game. The RPG tags on it maybe not sticking true to what it's really about. It's a space sandbox simulator, but MSSSS doesn't really roll off the tongue as well as MMORPG. Regardless for not being the classical idea of an RPG, it's by far the most immersive game I've played. But how does EVE Online achieve this? Everything in EVE Online is done by the players. Every major action, everything that gets built, war, pirating, black ops operations, intelligence, counterintelligence. I mean, there are few things that just look at the career tree. Stop it. Stop talking. Just give me your money. Tell me that that's not the most daunting but deeply complex career tree you've ever seen. And this tree isn't even defined by CCP themselves. This is a player-defined tree for the different professions in the game. Which maybe leads to one of my favorite things from EVE Online. and how we can see the influence of a kid who wanted to fly around space with his friends, elite style. Freedom. Freedom to do anything. And that also means the consequences and autonomy that comes with them. I mean, of course you can join a massive player-ran alliance and have yourself hunkered down by rules and stipulations, but you can also just do your own thing. And no one can say that either playstyle is wrong. Sometimes it's crazy to think that some people said Beck was a dictator, and that the idea for EVE Online came out of a boardroom and not out of a child's dream to fly in space alongside his friends. Especially when you can see the absolute disdain for rules and being told what to do echoed not just through the fundamentals of EVE Online, but through the actions of the players inside the galaxy. And what are these actions? Defiance, rebellion. Not just against other players, but against devs, against mechanics, but most importantly, against being told what to do. There's this famous saying in EVE Online, and some people say it's a rule. Don't undock what you can't afford to lose. But I always thought of this as more of a suggestion and less of a hard-stuck rule. But this saying definitely rings on one of the most important things about EVE Online, and probably the most difficult thing for new players to learn. You're going to become familiar with loss. Loss is no stranger in EVE Online. In most games, death isn't a very serious thing, but this game punishes you. More akin to Tarkov's death mechanics, or maybe even hardcore Diablo, your ship, all of the mods, all the customization, everything in its cargo hold, all lost. And this loss casts a shadow over all the activities in EVE Online, and it connects all the players together. What's important to remember is that normally this is all done for a gain, but more importantly, it's a necessary rite of passage for players. But at the same time there's this loss, it grants you the freedom that Beck so clearly instilled in the core of the game. The freedom that comes in many forms inside the game, not just in everything I've mentioned, but also in your career choices, classes that aren't locked, character creation that is super customizable. You can shoot anyone, anywhere, at any time. I mean, heck, you're even allowed to scam people. You can infiltrate their organizations, and if you gain access, you can steal all their stuff. You can customize your ships in a nearly infinite amount of ways, and you can go anywhere at any time as long as you know how to get there. I mentioned earlier esoteric games. And because of these things and more, EVE Online is very comfortably put into this category. And I think that brings me to something else. Another of the reasons it will most likely never be a large game or a game that you play, if you're expecting to pilot your ship like an Elite Dangerous, then you're better out trying that game. In fact, a writer once described the gameplay of EVE Online's player versus NPC as follows. I guess one of the good things about playing as an internet spaceship in EVE Online is that I could eat nachos and watch YouTube while the game effectively played itself in some situations. It's far more naval and strategic, with emphasis being put on decision making rather than mechanical piloting skills. It's more important to have good decision making in 95% of the gameplay, with mechanical skills taking up the other roughly 5%. It's definitely not a normal take on a spaceship game, so why do people still play this after nearly 20 years? Succinctly put, as with any other MMO, it's community. The community interacts with the harsh death mechanic, the player-ran economy, and freedom and consequences to end up forming one of the most tight-knit group of players, not just across space and EVE Online, but across the globe. Two pilots from completely different groups might hunt each other down one day, only to sit together and drink beer together in a bar at an EVE meet the next day. And here we can see the core of what Beck wanted to truly shine. To fly in space with his friends. In the words of a much better content creator and person, Jebby, there aren't any enemies in EVE, only opponents. And this year has been a long year. COVID has caused me to not go out as much. I spend a lot of time inside playing games, more than ever lately. And I miss going out and hanging out with my friends, and so I chose to get lost in a different world. One where, even over thousands of light years of distance, everything can be close. When I was 12, my favorite game was Phantasy Star Online because I wanted to be a hero. And when I was 15, it was Minecraft, because I wanted to build something that could last. And right now, my favorite game is EVE Online. Because I want to be lost.